Remember, I'm a Navy SEAL. He struck her once. She dropped him in front of 1,440 troops. There is a kind of silence that only happens when nearly 1,500 people stop breathing at the same time. Not the silence of boredom, not the silence of a crowd waiting for something to start. This was the silence that follows the moment everyone in the room realizes they just watched something they will never forget. That silence fell over Fort Bragg on a Tuesday morning, and it lasted exactly 3 seconds before the whole place erupted. This is a true story. It did not make the front page of any newspaper. There was no press conference. Nobody got a trophy. But the people who were there that morning, all 1,440 of them, have not stopped talking about it since. Let's go back to the beginning. It started the way a lot of these things do. A joint training exercise, multiple branches of the military, all pulled together onto one base, for a week of combined drills, shared tactics, and the kind of inter-service bonding that mostly involves people from different branches making fun of each other's uniforms. It was the kind of event that gets organized months in advance, with color-coded schedules and laminated name tags, and a very long list of things that are supposed to happen in a very specific order. One of those scheduled items was a combatives demonstration, hand-to-hand combat, real techniques, shown live in front of the full assembly so that service members from all branches could watch, learn, and understand what close-quarters training actually looks like at a high level. It was meant to be educational, informative, maybe even a little inspiring. Nobody expected it to become the most talked-about 4 seconds in that base's recent history. The instructor running the demonstration was a woman in her mid-30s. She had been with the Army for 15 years. She held a Level 4 combative certification, the highest level available in the Army's combatives program, and she had earned it the hard way, through years of training, competing, and teaching. Before the Army, she had trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for nearly a decade. She had competed at the national level. She had won. She had also lost, and she had learned more from the losses than most people learn from their wins. 2 overseas deployments, a stint as a combat medic. She had seen real things in real places, and come back quieter because of it. On the mat, she moved the way people move when they have done something so many times that it stops being a skill and starts being part of who they are. Easy, natural, unhurried. She was not loud. She did not talk about herself much. She did not need to. When she walked into a training space, the people who knew anything recognized it immediately, and the people who did not know anything were about to find out. The man who volunteered was the opposite in almost every way. Not in terms of ability. He was genuinely skilled. 12 years as a Navy SEAL will do that. 3 combat deployments, a distinguished service medal, a body built through thousands of hours of training in water, mud, sand, and heat. He was big. He was strong. And he had every reason to believe in himself. That part was not the problem. The problem was what he believed about everyone else. When the instructor called for a volunteer, someone willing to step forward and participate in a live demonstration, hands went up across the assembly. She scanned the crowd. He did not wait to be picked. He stood up and walked to the center of the mat before she had pointed to anyone. The crowd made a sound, somewhere between a laugh and an ooh. He was the kind of person who enters a room expecting it to rearrange itself around him, and most of the time, it did. He looked at her. She looked at him. She gave him a calm nod, the way a teacher nods at a student who has just sat down in class. He took it as something else. "Hope she's ready," he said, loud enough for the front rows to hear. A few people laughed. A few people winced. Most people just watched. She did not respond to that. She simply adjusted her stance and began to explain the first technique to the audience. Her voice was steady and clear, and carried across the assembly without any effort. She had done this hundreds of times. The demonstration was structured. She would walk through a technique slowly, explain what was happening at each stage, and then execute it at full speed so the audience could see the difference. It was a teaching format. It was not a competition. Both participants were supposed to understand that. He understood it differently. At some point during the first slow walkthrough, the part where both people move carefully and cooperatively to illustrate the technique, he decided to change the terms. Maybe it was the crowd. Maybe it was something about the situation that his pride could not sit with. Maybe he just genuinely did not think it through. Whatever the reason, he escalated. He hit her. Not a tap, not an accidental brush during a drill gone slightly wrong. A real strike, across her shoulder, with real force behind it. The sound of it was the first thing the audience processed. That flat, sharp crack of impact. Then the sight of her being driven slightly to the side by it. Then the realization of what had just happened. The assembly went completely quiet. On the raised platform at the far end of the arena, senior officers sat forward in their seats. A documentary film crew that had been recording the morning's events swung their camera toward the center of the mat. 1,440 people held very still. She did not yell. She did not step back. She did not look at the crowd, or the cameras, or the officers on the platform. She looked at him, and then she moved. What happened in the next 4 seconds is the kind of thing that is hard to describe in words, because the whole point of it was that it happened so fast that the brain struggles to keep up. She absorbed the impact of the strike by moving with it instead of against it. She dropped her level, her hips went down, her weight shifted forward, and she drove into him with everything she had, her arms wrapped around his legs. Her momentum carried them both, but only one of them was in control of that momentum, and it was not him. He went backward, she went forward and down on top of that motion, and he hit the mat the way a tree hits the ground, all at once, no grace in it, nothing soft about the landing. Before he could process what had happened, she was behind him, one arm across his throat, the other controlling his head, her body weight distributed in a way that made any attempt to escape completely pointless. She held him there for 1 second, long enough for it to be absolutely clear, and then she let go and stood up. 4 seconds, 3 seconds of silence. Then the crowd came apart. People who have been in the military for years will tell you that service members are not, as a general rule, an easy crowd to impress. They have seen a lot. They have done a lot. They tend toward understated reactions. They do not usually jump to their feet in the middle of a training exercise to cheer for a combative's demonstration. They jump to their feet. The sound was enormous. Applause, shouts. The kind of full-throated crowd noise that you feel in your chest before you hear it with your ears. People were pointing. People were turning to the person next to them. People who had been half asleep in the morning cold were suddenly very, very awake. He was still on the mat. Not injured, nothing broken. But he was on the mat, on his back, in front of 1,500 people. And for a moment, he just lay there and looked up at the sky and let that reality settle over him. There is a specific kind of moment that happens to people who have spent a long time believing something about themselves that turns out not to be completely true. It does not always look dramatic from the outside. Sometimes it just looks like a man lying on a mat, staring up at a gray Tuesday sky, very still. She offered him her hand. She extended it the same way she would have extended it to any training partner at the end of any session. No performance in it, no gloating, just the hand, offered. He looked at it for a moment, then he took it, and she helped him up. Whatever he said to her in that moment, the cameras did not pick it up. The crowd noise was too loud, but the footage shows her nodding once, the same calm nod she had given him at the very beginning, before any of it happened. The demonstration continued. She moved on to the next technique. The assembly settled back down. The schedule continued as planned. Afterward, there were conversations. There are always conversations after something like this. In the barracks, in the mess hall, in parking lots and hallways and anywhere else that people from the exercise crossed paths over the following days. The same story, told and retold, getting sharper each time in the way that good stories do. He was not formally punished. The strike was reviewed and categorized as an overzealous training error, not the classification many people felt it deserved, and that particular debate went on for longer than the incident itself. He was quietly moved off a leadership track for the remainder of the exercise. That was the official response. She received a written commendation from the base's commanding officer. It cited her composure, her professionalism, and her conduct under provocation. She accepted it without ceremony and went back to work. The documentary footage made its way through military channels, before eventually becoming more widely known. A lot of people watched it. A lot of people had opinions about it. She did not give any interviews or make any statements. As far as anyone could tell, she had said everything she needed to say in 4 seconds on a Tuesday morning in front of 1,440 witnesses. He gave exactly one statement. 3 words. She earned that. He did not elaborate, and honestly, he did not need to. Those 3 words said more about him in the aftermath than anything he had done before it. The thing about this story, the thing that has kept it circulating, kept people talking about it, kept it coming up in conversations months and years after it happened, is that it is not really about a fight. There was no fight. The whole thing lasted 4 seconds and ended with a handshake. What it is really about is something much more ordinary and much more common than any single training exercise at any single military base. It is about what happens when someone walks into a room carrying a credential instead of a presence. When the thing pinned to your chest, your rank, your title, your years of service, your letters and medals and distinctions, starts doing the work that your actual character is supposed to do. When you introduce yourself to a situation by telling people who you are instead of showing them. Remember, I'm a Navy SEAL. He said that out loud, in front of everyone, and the reason it mattered, the reason people have not forgotten it, is not that it was arrogant, though it was. It is that it was scared. People who are completely confident in what they can do not usually need to announce what they have done. The announcement was the tell. Something in him already knew he was standing in front of someone who might not be impressed by the credential, and that uncertainty needed to be managed, needed to be preemptively addressed, before the thing she was actually about to show him could happen. She did not manage the uncertainty, she let it sit. And then she showed him. There is a woman who showed up to work one Tuesday morning, did her job, kept her cool when someone hit her, and then put that person on the ground in 4 seconds, in front of 1,500 people. She did not make a speech about it. She did not post about it. She helped him up and kept going. That is what 15 years of real work looks like. Not the credential, not the announcement, just the thing itself, when it is needed, exactly as it should be. The grass on that field dried, the morning clouds burned off, the exercise continued, and then it ended, and everyone went back to wherever they came from. But something stayed behind on that mat. Something about the gap between what we say we are and what we actually are. Something about the difference between telling a room who you are and showing them. She showed them, and none of the 1,440 people who were there that morning will ever forget it.